Hi guys! So, this is part of my series on epilepsy and fear, which, as I mentioned in my previous video, has been something I've been avoiding for a while because fear is scary. It's really, really scary. So, you've probably seen, or maybe you haven't, my video on epilepsy and fear in terms of like the diagnosis, like being afraid to be diagnosed as epileptic. So, this video is really meant to talk about epilepsy and fear of death. So I am so sorry. Like, it's not funny, but like, I'm only laughing because I'm like, oh, yikes. Like, I'm not making any friends out here, but like, also because I process stressful things through humor. But I promise this, I'm not trying to paint epilepsy and seizure conditions as to be like this scary, horrible thing. It can be, that's an aspect of it, for me at least, but it doesn't mean it needs to be. And that's part of why I'm doing these videos, to like process it myself. And hopefully, if there's someone else out there who's experiencing similar things, so that they can be like, okay, I'm not alone in this. Like, these are thoughts other people are having as well. And like, how can we work through it together? So, if you haven't seen my previous video, I'll just recap that after my second grand mal seizure, the paramedic who took me to the hospital in the ambulance told me many, many times, like really just drove it into my head, like, you could have died, because he found me. Someone called an ambulance for me, a stranger. I was walking to the train to go home from work and had a seizure, fell down in the middle of the street, like a very, very busy street in downtown San Diego. So I was lying in a pool of my own blood, bleeding out my scalp, just scalp, like brain, skull, everything fine. But I was like bleeding from the scalp, and like a stranger called an ambulance for me, and very, scary situation. So after my first seizure, it was totally different. Like, I felt pretty chill about it, also because it was the first seizure, and the doctor's like, I mean, you seem fine. Like, it's probably just a fluke. It's just maybe one time thing. You're probably gonna be okay. And also because I was really healthy at the time, so they're like, I don't think it's something to worry about. But because of the conversation that I had with that paramedic, I don't even think I realized it at the time, but I took that on and took that in as a belief system for years. Like, I realized this like during quarantine. I mean, like, it was kind of in the back of my mind. Like, I kind of rolled it around a little bit, but because it was scary, I sort of like shoved it deep inside a little box, tied it with a bow, put that box into a cement box, and then put that box way, 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 way back in my mind, and was like, we're not even, locked the door, threw away the key. I was like, nope, that door doesn't even exist anymore. That box never happened. Like, too scary to deal with. And then during quarantine, I really started unpacking a lot of these things and was like, I need to deal with this. Like, this is scary. And especially because I started re-experiencing seizure symptoms, and then I ended up going to the hospital and getting diagnosed. So I was like, I need to deal with the fact that this has scared the shit out of me for 3 years. Like, and it gave me, I don't know, it's weird and hard to describe, because I think it's very difficult to look outside of yourself and to take an objective view at your own brain, because even within our brains, like, it's a comfy place to hang out, but like, your brain will tell you bullshit all the time. Like, it will be like, oh, don't do this thing you really want to do, like, you could say, I have a goal of public speaking or whatever, and then your brain's like, don't do it, you're gonna fail. So like, it's really difficult, I think, to like take a step outside of that and be like, this is real, this is not, this is rational, this isn't. Like, very incredibly difficult, especially when you have actual experiences that align with those beliefs and strengthen those beliefs. Whether the belief is serving you or not, whether you like the belief or not, the experience ties it together, wraps it around, makes it stronger, and it stays there, even if you don't want to acknowledge it. And that is what happened to me with my fear of death. And I think it can manifest into probably, millions theoretically, but like, to oversimplify it, to very different ways when someone has a fear of death. Either they do everything or they stop doing anything. They're like, bah. And I think because I spent my entire life being spontaneous as hell, I was like the look before you leap kid. Like, I remember, this is a bizarre memory, but like, I have a very specific memory from one of my favorite movies growing up as a child, The Sword and the Stone. 15 out of 10 would recommend. Absolutely hilarious. I don't know when it was made, but it's like, loved it. Like, I thought it was so good when I was a kid. And they're basically, within the story, the wizard Merlin, this is like a classic Arthur and Merlin story. He takes on Arthur as his apprentice, and Arthur's this like awkward as hell kid, like doesn't know he's like all limbs and like uncoordinated, can't do anything. And Merlin's like, I'm gonna train you. You're gonna be like just not a mess. And he turns him into a squirrel at one point to like give him a greater life perspective. Those who know me can see why I love this movie so much. I'm like an existential walking existential crisis, just like, what if squirrels do? You know, like it's out of control. The other day I was watching the rain and I was like, what if raindrops could remember their journey? And how would one raindrop experience it differently than another raindrop? And would they look at other raindrops and wonder about the differences in size and journeys and whatever? Like, this is where my mind's just like at normally. So like you can imagine tiny Megan watching this boy turned into a squirrel. I'm like, what a different life perspective. How fascinating. What do you think just like on and on and on. So I remember though that was the lesson Merlin was trying to teach the squirrel Arthur. It was still the boy, but as a squirrel, that you can't just like run across the branches and just fly off and run and jump. And I was like, why not? Like, that was me as a kid. That was me growing up. That was me my entire life, just doing things, just like impulsive as hell because I wanted to, and I just want to see what happened. Like, sometimes, obviously, my own detriment. Like, I'm not advocating this as a lifestyle because it didn't always lead me to good places. Like, it led me to some really scary stuff sometimes. But I think because that was my entire life leading up to that point, for me, it was like a 180-degree turn, like a complete about face of like, maybe I'm doing dumb shit all the time that will kill me. Because after my first seizure, I was like in the gym like a week and a half later setting PRs for deadlifts, and I was like, I'm the strongest woman alive. Nothing can stop me. And I felt invincible. Like, I felt like a next level, like, nothing can touch me. I am a superhero. I had a seizure. I ended up in the hospital. I took an ambulance, and I am fit as hell. Like, I am fine. I've recovered. I'm back in the gym, crushing it. Like, so I went from there to like when I had my second seizure, it was like, whoop. And it's like, everything is scary. Like, life is terrifying. So in a sense, it motivated me to do what I had wanted to do because I'd been wanting to move back to Europe since I realized I was born in England as a small child, which is like one of my first memories. Like, I always knew I was born in England and I always wanted to move back there. I instead decided to move to the Czech Republic, and I'm so glad I did because I love it here. Love it, love it, love it. But so it like gave me that final push to like, if I could die at any moment, I want to move to Europe, because if I'm going to die, I would rather at least try to live there, try to live my dreams and die there than die here when I know I'm stressed out and having a miserable time. Like, I was in a horrible place right before I moved to Europe, like hated everything, was so dissatisfied with life and with myself. And then like, I don't know, it's hard to look back on it again, as I said, objectively, but realizing as much as I can looking back, like, I really realized that I held myself back from a lot of stuff because I started just being afraid of everything. I stopped working out because I was like, what if I'm running and I have a seizure and it kills me? And like all this stuff. And I think part of that was like a lot of suggestions from people in my life of like, hey, what if this is really dumb to move to another country? What if you're by yourself? What if next time nobody saves you? And again, understand that is meant to be helpful advice, but it got in my head. I was like, and I kind of like, I tend to like snap react to those things. I'm like, it doesn't matter, whatever. Like, I'm gonna do what I want. So I did react that way. I did move to Europe, but the fear was there. I was like, that's a good point. Like, because that's the thing with the grand mal seizures that I had is that I needed somebody to save me. I needed somebody else to call an ambulance for me, because in addition to just having a seizure, I had split my head open and I was laying there bleeding, and like I needed medical attention. So I couldn't, because of the shock that I was in, like, couldn't just call an ambulance for myself. Like, I could barely even speak or like acknowledge what was going on around me. So that did become a fear of mine. So like I said, I stopped running, stopped working out, and I used to love running before that, and loved weight training, loved yoga, like loved just living an active lifestyle. But then I started to feel like that would kill me someday. So I stopped doing it. I didn't travel as much as I wanted to. Like, I just became really afraid of a lot of things in life, which, super fun, became a big thing after quarantine. Like, went back into the world and everything was scary for me, and almost had an anxiety attack leaving my house every single time. So that was, I think, what pushed me back into seizure zone, was that like it was too much. Like, anxiety is not a good thing if you have seizures. Like, it's, for me at least, like, pushes me down the highway of like, you're heading straight towards seizure town if you don't get off this track. So Like for me, that's what it did. Like it didn't, I don't feel like it did anything positive in terms of like, all right, if I die, like let me do all these things and let me like make my mark on the world or like travel the world, like do whatever like bucket list items I had. It instead made me do the opposite, where I like suppressed my voice, became less authentic, became afraid of everything, started worrying about everything too much. Like, and it's shit because it's like obviously I wasn't happy. It wasn't who I was. Like it's not who I don't feel like I've been who I wanted to be as much as I could have been the past few years. But weirdly enough, through a combination of therapy, personal development, and being diagnosed as epileptic recently, it has reopened me to the possibility of the fact that like life doesn't end where epilepsy begins, which sounds grossly cheesy, but like I mean it. Like there are people who have lived their lives and been totally fine, but also been epileptics, but like done a lot of stuff or just been happy. Like I'm not saying you have to produce to be, like a satisfied, like self-actualized human being. You don't. You can be on a farm and chill. You can be in the mountains. Like you can do whatever. But like I wasn't doing anything because I was like, I'm so afraid that something will kill me. So I'm gonna end this one here because I have a lot more videos I want to do on fear, and then I promise the positivity is coming. Like this is not meant to be negative, but I'm more just trying to share my experiences because I feel like I can't be the only one that's experienced this, and hopefully it helps somebody else to realize that like, okay, like fear is real, and that's, whether it's rational or irrational, I am experiencing it, and maybe they can have a different experience of like, okay, I don't need to like cut myself off from my dreams and life and happiness just because I have either epilepsy or this thing, that thing, whatever. Like things can be manageable. There can be a way to live in life that makes you happy, even if you have something scary going on health wise, mentality wise. What do I even speak English? Like like you can have something going on and still make the best of life, because I think that's what we're all here for, and that's what we all deserve, is the utmost happiness, like the pure bliss, like those moments. And I find it hard to put into words, and I'm going to steal my favorite author John Green's quote from my favorite book from him, The Fault in Our Stars, where I feel like my thoughts are stars that I cannot fathom into constellations of like one clear coherent thought always. But to me, the meaning of life is that feeling when, like for me, I felt it when I went to the Cliffs of Moher, when I walked out on the Cliffs of Moher in Ireland, and there are these 700-meter above sea level cliffs. Like you feel tiny, 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 and you're looking out into this great expanse of everything, and it takes the breath out of you. Like it's just like, oh my God. And like that to me, in whatever way you find it, whether it's knitting, owning a dog, that's my dream, or like all of these things, anything in between, outside, whatever, just like pure blissful happiness, pure just like magic moments. I think that's what life is meant for, and I think that that can be for all of us and should be for all of us, whether you have a underlying health condition, a long-term health condition, whatever. And I want to make that clear that like fear of death, I think, is probably a normal human reaction because we don't really know, but don't let it control your life and take you away from the things that really will make you happy, because we deserve happiness. It's the least that we can do for ourselves while we're here. So thank you for watching this. See you guys next time for a little bit more fear, and then I promise we'll hop, skip, and jump into positivity. Bye.